the freedom that it calls us to. And pray on this day that our country has now decided it is indeed a federal holiday for all to stop and to observe. Pray, God, that we won't fall into the trap of losing the reason for this season. And pray, God, as much as we celebrate, as much as we commemorate, as much, God, as we take this well-deserved day off, that we continue to fight for the freedom and justice that lies right there in front of us. So I thank you for this gathering. I thank you for this rally. And I thank you, God, for what it represents and what we are launching on this day. May your hand remain upon it as we continue to keep our hands to the plow. As always, in your name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Okay, and now we will have a few welcoming words from Mayor Helman Kaba of Perth Amboy.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to our beautiful city of Perth Amboy, where we honor and have so many guests throughout the entire state of New Jersey. It is an honor for me to be here with each and every one of you. I warmly welcome Senator Booker, Mayor Baraka, Assemblywoman Smugger. Is she here? No? Mr. Ryan Haywood, thank you. And to all the dignitaries and to all of you that are here today, thank you. It's a very important day here today in the city of Perth Amboy. Today we celebrate and reflect upon the significance of Juneteenth, a historic occasion of great importance of our city. Juneteenth marks the emancipation of enslaved African Americans in the United States, and it's a day of to recognize the resilience, strength, and determination of those who fought for freedom. Perth Amboy has a unique connection to this history. As many of you already know, our city was a middle passage port where enslaved Africans were brought to the Americas. It is a painful chapter in our past, but it is essential that we recognize, acknowledge, and confront our history honestly. It also represents a commitment by our city to acknowledge the past and ensure that future generations understand the impact of this dark chapter in human history. We take great pride in our city's efforts to preserve and promote the history of Perth Amboy. We strive to create a space for dialogue, education, and healing. Through community engagement and initiatives, we are actively working towards social justice, equality, and the recognition of human rights. Let us use this occasion to continue the journey towards a more inclusive, equitable, and just society. Thank you all once again for coming to the city of Perth Amboy as we honor Juneteenth and its profound impact on our city and our beautiful nation. I want to once again thank Senator Cory Booker, Mayor Baraka, Mr. Haywood, Bishop Stokes, and all the dignitaries that are here today. The city of Perth Amboy will always stand united in pursuing justice, equality, and creating, once again, a more inclusive future for all. Let us continue to work together, learn from our past, and build a stronger and more equitable home for all of our residents. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. Thank you. God bless.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Come on, you all. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to welcome you all to the launch of the New Jersey Reparations Council.
Yes.
I want to thank Mayor Akaba for hosting us and sharing this space with us on this day, Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day. I thank you for joining us at this hallowed space here in Perth Amboy. As you all know, one of the major ports into which enslaved black people entered New Jersey. Today on Juneteenth, we honor the millions of black people who died during the Middle Passage after they were stolen from Africa, chained and tightly packed into dark, filthy, stifling hot cargo holds where they were subjected to unimaginable abuse, dehydration, malnutrition, and disease. And with sober minds and heavy hearts, we honor the thousands of black people who survived those month-long trips across the Atlantic Ocean only to arrive here in New Jersey to be sold into a system of slavery that endured for more than 200 years. A system of slavery that extracted free black labor from enslaved people that helped to build New Jersey into the most prosperous state in the country today. New Jersey's commitment to slavery was so profound that historian Elaine Buck called it the slave state of the North. By 1830, over 2/3 of all enslaved people in the North were held captive here in New Jersey. And when New Jersey finally became the last northern state to end slavery, it developed its own form of sharecropping. We called it cottaging. This system continued into the 20th century through widespread use of racially restrictive covenants, Jim Crow segregation in the North, the denial of home ownership opportunities through the GI Bill for black World War II veterans, exclusionary zoning and lending practices, and redlining, each preventing, among other things, black home ownership and connection to wealth. But why, Ryan, why Senator Booker, why Mayor Baraka, does this matter today on Juneteenth in 2023? It matters not only because we must never forget, but also because we can draw a direct line from our shameful history to the racial disparities that black people in New Jersey face. Some of the worst in America, in every direction, in wealth, in health, in education, incarceration, and segregation. Our history is why New Jersey is a modern-day version of Dr. King's Two Americas. In white New Jersey, for example, the median household wealth is $322,500, but it's just $17,700 in black New Jersey, a more than $300,000 racial wealth gap. These two New Jerseys were designed at our founding when each white settling family was given 150 acres of land and an additional 150 acres of land for each enslaved black person they brought with them. And although slavery shaped every aspect of modern New Jersey, not you all, but too many people, not you all, believe it never happened here. And that racial inequality is not a New Jersey problem, but New Jersey's original sin of slavery and its lasting stain tell a vastly different story. That's why we are not afraid to say the word reparations. That's why we are not afraid to say the word reparations. That's why we are not afraid to say the word reparations. And that's why today we are convening the first of its kind New Jersey Reparations Council. Because we are not afraid to say the word reparations. Co-chaired by Khalil Gibran Muhammad and Tajania Henderson and comprised of local, state, and national experts, the council will finally confront and work to repair the harm from New Jersey's deep and often overlooked institution of slavery and its enduring impact on the contemporary life of black people in our state. Because these inequalities, these inequities are reinforced by generations of policy design, not individual behaviors. They must be repaired by design. The council will not only propose bold strategic policies to repair the enduring harm to black people from slavery, but it will also answer this foundational question. And that is, what kind of reparative system does New Jersey need to build and invest in for black people here to finally be free? Free to thrive, free to win, free to be connected to the very best things that New Jersey has to offer. Free to finally thrive, free to win. And as we begin this substantial undertaking, we know there are plenty of questions, including what will reparations in New Jersey look like and for whom? As conveners, we are not predetermining the council's conclusions. Our affirmative vision is that the council will think boldly and imaginatively and propose solutions that will both compensate the descendants of enslaved black people and their communities for lost wages and address structural racism at its core through reparative policies and investments that are commensurate and proportional to the enduring harm from slavery. On Juneteenth 2025, this council will produce a report that will draw direct connections between New Jersey's history and its present and propose comprehensive policy recommendations that will, on their own, serve as a blueprint for how New Jersey can finally address reparations. And importantly, also act as a vast resource to the reparations task force that New Jersey itself will ultimately create.
Yes.
Thanks in large part to the advocacy of our faith partners who are saying the word reparations. As we look ahead and think about this work and where we are today, this undertaking is both thrilling and daunting. But we know that the only way forward to building a new New Jersey is through. I'm convinced that every movement for racial justice requires fierce and independent advocates to lift their voices when others don't or won't. And I'm also convinced that the New Jersey Reparations Council, building on a decades-long fight for reparations in the state, will help to move the issue of reparations from an unsafe, unpalatable, and impossible conversation to inevitable conventional wisdom.
Yes.
And so I thank you all for standing with us today on the launch of the New Jersey Reparations Council. God bless you and happy Juneteenth. And with that, I am thrilled to bring to the mic our very first lawyer. At the beginning of his career, before he became a household name, before he was the mayor of the city of North, before he became a fancy senator, he was the lawyer that was hired by Alan Lowenstein, our founder, Senator Cory Booker.
When did I become a fancy senator? I'm going to go back down to Washington tomorrow and let them know. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for my fancy tie. I shop in Irvington. I hope you don't mind. It's a great little discount place. I bought this suit from. $150. Oh, y'all give it up for Ryan Hager. A force for justice. An instrument of peace. A person who is making love real in our communities and helping us to wake up to who we are.
Yes.
Tell your story. Tell the truth.
Yes.
Reckon with our past and make for a better future. We're at a time now that folk are trying to obscure our past. Folks are banning books. Folks are trying to put gag orders on teachers and not allow them to teach the painful, wretched past that we have lived. It cheapens America. It diminishes the greatness of a nation that didn't just get put down here in some kind of Disney-ified fashion. We are a nation that had to overcome hardship and pain, struggle and suffering. We are a nation that was founded and conceived in liberty, but read the founding documents, that refer to Native Americans as savages, women not at all, blacks as fractions of human beings, and enshrine that original sin into our history. We are not here because of some great collection of founding fathers alone. These imperfect geniuses did not get us here. It was a collection of Americans who stridently and defiantly and persistently and resistantly fought to make this nation live up to its ideals. And yet people want to obscure that truth. You cheapen America when you don't tell about the struggles of abolitionists. You cheapen America when you don't tell about the struggles of the greatest infrastructure project America ever knew, the Underground Railroad. You cheapen America when you obscure the massacres of Native Americans and African Americans and Asian Americans. You obscure the truth of America. And so here we are on this day of Jubilee to tell the truth. And when you tell our truth, you celebrate. When you remember our ancestors, you celebrate. Now, I want you all to know I am grateful to New Jersey. I'm humbled by the city of Newark. 25 years ago this month, elected to the first office I ever held, city council person. I'm grateful to have been the mayor of New Jersey's largest city. I'm even more grateful that the beautiful bald man that took over after me, native son of Newark, son of Amiri Baraka. Coach should write a superhero novel about him. I'm grateful that he is here today. I am grateful for a mayor of this city, Perth Amboy, and his mayor. I don't know what it is about these bald mayors, but they're pretty good. Who stood here before this gathering and said very blatantly, we in Perth Amboy don't forget. We in Perth Amboy are going to tell the truth. We're going to uncover the past so that all can see from whence we came. This spot right here. Human beings were sold into torture. This spot right here. Human beings chained and beaten, torn from their historical context, having their religions and their histories stripped from them. When this state sent me to Washington, D.C., I was surprised. It's 2013, and I looked around, and I couldn't believe that folk weren't calling questions. One, I couldn't believe that there was so little diversity in the United States Senate. I went to the Judiciary Committee, and it was all white senators, and their staffs all behind them were white. And my team and I, because I come home to the Central Ward of Newark, New Jersey, we knew we had to start calling questions. We went and pushed to get every Democratic senator. You have to publish the diversity statistics on your staff. Some people pushed back on it, but now we have more blacks, Latinos, women, Asians serving in the Senate than ever before. We call the questions because we know our past. Read the 13th Amendment. The history of slavery is deeply implicated in the system of mass incarceration. And so we fought for Congress after Congress after Congress to find ways to liberate unjustly incarcerated people. Got the First Step Act, thousands of people, most of them minorities, liberated from that legislation. We called questions. Why in the United States of America, after a century of trying, did we never pass anti-lynching legislation? Thousands of blacks, that strange fruit. And finally, after over a century of trying, we wrote the legislation, we got the bill passed, and was signed by President Biden. We called the questions. Why in the United States of America did black women die in childbirth at 3 times the rate? And if you don't know the history of what has been done to black women and their reproductive rights, we call the questions. Why is environmental justice plaguing so many communities of color? We call the questions. Push for the legislation. Let pipes out of the ground. push the legislation. Why, if you put the map of where trees are planted in America and communities, you would see that there is a tree apartheid. We called the question, put the billions of dollars for urban tree planting in the bill and got it passed. Question after question, by having diversity in the Senate, different lived experiences, people are calling questions. I'll give you one last example. The biggest pension funds in our country, hundreds of billions of dollars, creating millionaires all over the place, from Texas to New Jersey. Red states and blues, they have emerging managers, programs looking to find qualified managers, blacks and women, Latinos, and others to manage that money. Barclays Bank says the minorities and the women are getting better returns than the big folks. Call in the question, how much of our billions of dollars of pensions paid into by diverse people, paid into by women, paid into by blacks and others? Why? How much money is being managed by emerging managers? We found out zero, not $1. It is time to call the questions, to not accept the reality that we live in, but begin to challenge the fact that we still are a nation in the quest for justice, equality, and inclusion. And it's not just for some people, it's for all people. It makes us all better. It makes America better. It bends the arc of the moral universe. And so, a bunch of us did something radical. After sponsoring all the legislation I just talked about, for all the changes we've started to be able to make, especially with the support of a president and a vice president who happens to be the first woman and first black person, we decided to say, wait a minute. When you have a specific measurable harm, and you can see the economic impact of that measurable specific harm, why aren't we calling the question for justice? Yes. I moved to the Agricultural Committee because blacks in this country used to own about 15% of the land in the nation. There used to be over 1 million black farmers at the end of slavery. Now there's barely 50,000. Specific measurable harms that were done by the United States Department of Agriculture denied African Americans access to programs that others got. They gave them loans and insurance and often literally sought to bilk them out of their land. We used legal cases and put in money and resources to correct that harm. So why would we start talking about slavery and want to do the research, want to understand it? Why are people resisting the efforts to focus and measure that specific harm and for this nation to make restitution or to bring about justice? Yes. This is not a radical concept. In fact, others have done it around the country. From Florida to California, they have done research and found out in specific cases, once they did the research, formed the commissions, looked at the issues, they found out, wait a minute, here is the family that was stolen land. We saw this recently in shorefront property in California. Let us make restitution. Let us repair the damage that was done. Universities have done it. On the brink, right in Washington, on the brink of insolvency, they sold slaves to keep the university there. But for the bondage of those black people, that university wouldn't have made it. Well, they did the study, they looked at the research, and now they are trying to say this was wrong. And those folks who literally with their lives helped this university endure, we have an obligation. So we sponsor on the federal level legislation to form a commission to better study the issue at a time that many people don't want you to know about our past. That many people are trying to whitewash or sanitize our history. And so I want to say thank you to Shavonda Sumter for calling on the legislature to study the New Jersey past. But I am definitely up here to testify that on a day of Jubilee, a day of freedom, a day to celebrate our ancestors, I want to celebrate the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice. Hallelujah! academics.
Yes.
Got a man from Harvard Kennedy School up in here. Come on now. Got a sister from Rutgers Law School up in here. Leading this. We in New Jersey deserve to not only know the truth, but armed with that information and that collective knowledge to take action on rectifying the ills of our past and making for not just justice, but liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Booker, for those powerful words and for those very moving words. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jean-Pierre Brutus, and it's a genuine pleasure to see all you here. Honestly, it's almost like I cannot believe this, but just to warn you all, you will be seeing a lot of my face today during this presentation, so get used to it. Juneteenth marks a gap. A gap between when the Confederacy surrendered and when the Union arrived at Galveston. A gap between July 4th and Juneteenth. A gap between America's professed ideals and the lived reality of Black folk. And yet, that gap is also a space of potential and possibility. It is in that very space that those enslaved folks in Galveston self-emancipated before the troops had arrived in Galveston. A space where Black folks have boldly been imaginative about freedom and playfully creative about this. It is in that very tradition, in that spirit, that this council will answer the fundamental question: what will it take to refashion the future for Black folks to be genuinely free in a multiracial democracy in New Jersey?
Yes.
The New Jersey Reparations Council is a unique collaboration of state and national experts. We will embark on a 2-year study of slavery and its aftermath in New Jersey. It will be informed by extensive research and analysis of 9 subject matter areas. Each of these will address an aspect of the enduring impact of slavery in New Jersey, including the history of slavery in New Jersey, public education and narrative, economic justice, segregation in New Jersey, democracy, public safety and justice, health equity, environmental justice, and faith and Black resistance. This committee and this council will also engage members of New Jersey's communities. Each committee will hold one virtual public session designed to share its findings with the public and drive a public dialogue on reparations. These sessions, these virtual sessions, will be live streamed by NJPBS. Also, each committee will hold 2, or I should say the council will hold 2 in-person public events. One next year on June 2024, which will be an interim event, and one on June 2025, which will announce the council's final recommendations. Each of these in-person events will be broadcast by NJPBS. And as my colleague noted, this council will recommend bold, forward-thinking, and reparative policies in a cohesive narrative report that will identify key strategic investments and reforms to repair the lasting harms of slavery, that will provide a blueprint for New Jersey going forward. And as many have noted before me, when Black people get free, everyone gets free. It's my pleasure and my honor now to introduce Chairman Larry Ham. Larry Ham has been a relentless advocate for African Americans and the cause of human rights and civil rights for all oppressed people for more than 52 years. He is a founder and current chairman of the People's Organization for Progress, a statewide, independent, grassroots organization. HOP works for racial, social, economic justice, and peace. Give it up for Chairman Henry.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? And when do we want it? Thank you very much. Happy Juneteenth. I want to thank the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice and my friend and my brother and my comrade in the struggle, Ryan Haygood. Thank you, Ryan. And thank you for allowing me a few minutes to talk to you about this important issue on this day, Juneteenth. And I want to pay tribute to a black woman that made this day possible, Sister Opal Lee, that made possible this Juneteenth holiday. The People's Organization for Progress demands reparations for the descendants of those who were enslaved in this country. It has always been our position from the time that our organization was founded, it was part of our political program, that there must be restitution, there must be compensation for the 250 years of stolen labor in this country, stolen from our ancestors. They stole us, they sold us, they owe us. We demand reparations, and we demand immediately the passage of reparations legislation. Reparations legislation in the New Jersey State Legislature, reparations legislation in the Congress. It is an insult to the African American community, which is whose votes have been responsible for putting so many of those who are in the state legislature that we can't even get a bill out of committee to study the issue of reparations. That is an abomination. Pass the bill. Pass the bill. Pass the bill. We demand passage of the New Jersey Reparations Task Force bill. And we demand passage of H.R. 40, originally introduced by Congressman John Conyers in the 1980s. And what are the origins of H.R. 40? It's important to understand why we're here today on Juneteenth. Juneteenth marks the conclusion of the Civil War. What did it take to end the bondage of our people? We prayed for an end to slavery. We petitioned for an end to slavery. We asked our leaders for an end to slavery. And that end did not come until there was a war. More Americans died in the Civil War than in World Wars I, II, Korea, and Vietnam combined. This is the price of freedom. And we often talk about the victory of the North over the South. But I want to say a word about those who made that victory possible. And those were the black soldiers who fought during the Civil War, who we must also honor today. It is during this Civil War, the North did not have the resolve to fight. McClellan had 100,000 men sitting on the Potomac. Lincoln sent him telegrams. Fight. He wouldn't fight. He fired McClellan and he hired Ulysses S. Grant. And Ulysses S. Grant hired some other generals, one of whom was William
Tecumseh Sherman. And it was Sherman who said, I'm going to teach the South the price of sedition. And he went through the South. This wasn't going to be a 20-year war. He went through the South. He fought. He reached South Carolina, and he met with the black people in South Carolina. And he asked the black leaders and the black ministers, what do you want? The people said, we want land. Sherman took out his pen. He wrote a general order number 15. We're going to expropriate the land from the slave masters and give it to those who work the land. Sherman expropriated 400,000 acres of land from the slave masters and distributed it to the formerly enslaved. That became the basis for the bill that was introduced by Thaddeus Stevens, H.R. 29, which said each freedman or his survivor, if he perished during the Civil War, would receive 40 acres and $50. The mule wasn't in the bill. The mule came from the Union Army, because anybody that's from the South, anybody that's worked the land, knows you have to have a mule or oxen or something to help pull that plow. So the Union soldiers would give the mules that pulled the cannon to the enslaved people. That's where the mule came from. H.R. 29 was on track to pass through the House of Representatives, and then what happened? Lincoln was assassinated in April of 1865. And although the bill did not pass, the idea did not die. And we are here in this place today to demand the reparations that we should have received in 1865. Let me sit down because I don't want to be a bad guest. When did I learn about reparations? I learned about reparations when I was with the mayor's father, Amiri Baraka. I was the youngest delegate to the National Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana, in 1972. And it was in Gary, Indiana, that I met another black woman to whom we should pay tribute. I met Queen Mother Moore at the National Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana. And for those who don't know, Queen Mother Moore was a campaigner for reparations long before most of us were even born. But she was there in Gary, Indiana. And reparations was one of the planks of the National Black Political Convention that came out of Gary, Indiana. And again in 2003, legislation was introduced in New Jersey to form a reparations commission. And it failed then. And it's still languishing in committee. But I'm so honored to have been asked to be on this New Jersey Reparations Council so that we can, in fact, get this bill out of committee. So we call today on everybody to get involved in the fight for reparations. Today in Newark, New Jersey, we will be marching for reparations. And I hope all of you will join us. We will meet at 2 o'clock at the Lincoln statue. How appropriate. At the statue of Abraham Lincoln. We will meet there and we will march to the federal building. And there we will call on both the New Jersey State Legislature and the Congress of the United States to pass the reparations legislation. Some people think that we won't get reparations. But there were people who thought slavery would never be abolished. There was a governor who stood in the doorway of the University of Mississippi and said, segregation now, segregation forever. He's dead, and Jim Crow is dead too. So I'm here to tell you that we are going to get reparations. That African Americans deserve reparations. If this country can provide reparations for other people, it can provide it to the descendants of those who were enslaved by the policies of this nation and of this state. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Power to the people.
Thank you so much, Chairman Graham. And thank you especially for putting the work that we're doing here within a lineage of a long-standing movement for calling for reparations in this country. Really appreciate that. And now it is my pleasure and truly my honor to introduce Mayor Ras Baraka. Ras J. Baraka is the 40th mayor of the city of Newark, a native of Newark, the son of Amina and Amiri Baraka, whose family has lived in the city for more than 80 years. Mayor Baraka is recognized nationally as a thought leader in the space of urban revitalization and his commitment to reducing crime, reimagining public safety, and developing innovative and community-driven approaches to eliminating income inequality. And he has solidified his status as one of the country's most progressive elected officials. Please give it up for Mayor Ras Baraka.
Yeah, I don't know what's left to be said after all that. After Larry Ham, Jesus. Ryan did this on purpose. Just want to thank Mayor Cabo for inviting us to the city, Perth Amboy. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. It's beautiful. Just imagine how beautiful this is. It was actually slaves coming down this waterway at one point. I want to thank Senator Booker, who continues to fight consistently for us. Proud to have him as my senator. He's from New Jersey, but he's from Newark, according to us. But we are proud of that, and thank you. Obviously, Larry Ham, who fires him up all the time. He's probably the most consistent organizer, activist that we have in the entire state of New Jersey. Institute for Social Justice, again, thank you again. My neighbor, my friend, my comrade, Ryan Haygood. Incredible things that are happening through the Institute of Social Justice, always taking us further and further and further, and that's exactly what you need to do. This Reparations Council is right what we need at the right time. How you doing, Sybil Sumter? I didn't see you over there. God bless you. Thank you for staying the course and keeping the fight, for us, 100%. It's interesting, though, we do this on Juneteenth in Perth Amboy. There are a lot of Juneteenth celebrations going on around the state. Some of them the legislators are participating in. There's a lot of, which means they recognize our oppression, just not our restitution. They acknowledge our pain, but not our promise. These people understand the barbarism of Bull Connor, but they don't understand what it takes to get away from a person like Bull Connor. And they will not provide a bridge for us to move from enslavement to democracy, from bondage to freedom. So the problem has never been that liberals, and you don't mind if I call you that. The problem is that liberals hate the barbarism and the evil
and the violence of slavery and Jim Crow, they just never bought into the idea that King said that we should have the resources to eat out of the lunch counters that they refused to let us in the first place. And that really is the problem. Like, how do we now get justice and restitution after decades, centuries of imprisonment? And not just slavery, but everything that happened as a result of slavery and everything after. I'm mayor of one of the largest city in the state, and mayors like me all over the country, and the senator can attest to this. We fight every day trying to remedy problems that we didn't create. And journalists and newspapers and press, demean us and talk about us when we can't solve the problems that these people created. And so they talk about us because crime is too high when they created the system that forced us into criminality. They talk about the poverty that exists in the communities, but poverty exists because of slavery and everything thereafter, because of Jim Crow. They talk about all of the issues that we fight around, healthcare, access to healthcare, but they actually purposefully and deliberately created systems that denied us healthcare, that denied us access to quality food, that made it difficult for us to find employment and jobs, that gave us the worst and poor education, and argue with us because we can't figure it out. Because with the small amount of resources that we have, we got to give away properties for $1 because we don't own property in the state of New Jersey. And so they make a mockery out of it, a parade, the parade of horrors that we went through in this country, that created these cities that we have. We have to watch ourselves on TV, defend ourselves, trying to fix a problem that white supremacy created. And refuse to, and then when you ask for more resources to do it, then what are you going to do with those resources that you have?
That's right.
Right? And then that becomes the question. Well, what are you going to do with these resources? Well, we're going to begin by asking for the things or getting the things that most Americans want. Because we're asking for stuff that's not crazy,
Right. Yeah.
Paul Robeson said, what we ask for is right, and therein lies the power of our demand. We just want quality education. We want our kids to go to school where people teach the truth. We want a piece of playground to play in. We want to own homes like other Americans with backyards. And we got a right to go on vacation when we get tired. We want to go to the doctor when we get sick and not choose between health care and a house. We don't want to pay rent that's out of control, to live in neighborhoods that are falling down. We don't want to be stopped on a turnpike and shot in the back or choked for cigarettes. We don't want our children murdered for playing their music too loud. This is what we want. We want what other Americans want. We're not asking for something that's crazy. What we ask for is right. We just want to be able to raise our children in a place where they're honored and have the resources to do those things collectively and celebrate Juneteenth without coming here asking for things that we should have had already. That's what we want. So it's not crazy what we're asking for. We're just asking for normal stuff. And we want everything we worked for. And we want it with interest. That's it. It's nothing spectacular. And guess what? We'll take whatever you have. Farm subsidies, earned income tax credits, welfare, free housing, free education, whatever you have. Stimulus checks. We'll take it all. I'm not ashamed of it. We'll take it all. Women, we want all of it. And guess what? All of that together is still not enough to pay for the things that we've lost along the way. It's still not enough. All of that and none of it is not enough. We'll take it all. Don't be ashamed. We used to be ashamed because people were getting food stamps. Well, I want food stamps too. I'm not, we want education and food. I don't want you to think I'm making a mockery of it, but what I'm telling you though is that what you have for us is not enough. So at least for us to discuss it, for us to talk about it, you should be happy we just want to talk about it. So for us just to
discuss it. We just want to have a conversation, if you will. Permit us at least to convene and bring history and talk about the things that happened and how we should be paid for it. And I know people are going to, oh, the mayor said we want farm subsidies and education. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. We want child tax credits. Thanks to our senator, we want them more. We want all of it. So we can at least begin with a conversation, right?
That's right.
And I know that people think that this is difficult. So people will talk about it, say, they talk about something that's not going to happen. Frederick Douglass in 1857, when Dred Scott was passed through the Supreme Court, they asked him, do he feel defeated? Does he feel defeated? He said, our oppression, even as organized as ours is, always seems invincible all the way up to the hour that it falls.
Right. It must.
So this thing will come crumbling down.
Yes.
And our ability to get what is owed to us will happen.
That's right.
It is protracted, but it will take place.
All right.
That generations, as Larry pointed out, ahead of us have been fighting for this. It is our turn as the baton has been passed to us. And the Institute for Social Justice is carrying it another leg down the field.
That's right.
I thank you for that. And I pray that we receive what we're supposed to receive in this generation, in this lifetime. And I thank our great-great-grandmothers for their prayers. And I want to close on that. Because their prayers didn't mean our life would be easy. It didn't mean that we would get everything. It meant that when the bullets were shot, that they missed us. When the police pulled us over, they let us go. Our great-grandmother prayed that when they wasn't allowing the people to go to school, that we would at least get in one.
That's right.
Our great-grandmothers prayed that when they was pulling people out of their homes trying to lynch them, that they missed our house. So I want to thank my great-grandmother's prayers, because even in schools that were falling apart, that we got a decent education anyway. Even when they denied us the right to vote, we still got Barack Obama anyway. Even when they wouldn't let us in their churches, we built our own. When they didn't let us in their fraternities, we started our own fraternity. I thank my great-great-grandmother's prayers, because it's their prayers that allowed us to be on a port where slaves were bought and sold to demand reparations in 2023 in a sunny day in Perth Amboy. That my great-great-grandmother prayed somewhere on somebody's plantation that freedom would visit her family, and thank God that he is real and alive and well this afternoon. Godspeed.
Barack was nervous about coming after Sherman Ham, but I think he really brought us to church, speaking truth to power. And that's why the Institute asked him to narrate our animated explainer video. If you haven't seen it, please go to our YouTube page. Please take a look and watch that video. Mayor Baraka does a wonderful job, and I just want to thank him for that.
And share it.
Now it's my pleasure to introduce a wonderful champion of the Reparations Task Force bill in the legislature, Assemblywoman Shavonda Sumter.
Yes, yes.
Assemblywoman Sumter entered the New Jersey General Assembly in 2012. She has served in the executive leadership as Deputy Speaker and Majority Conference Leader. She currently represents the 35th Legislative District that include parts of Bergen and Passaic County. Currently, she serves as the chair of the Assembly Committee of Community Development Affairs. She's also a member of the Labor and Commerce and Economic Development Committees. In addition, Assemblywoman Sumter is the first woman to serve as the chair of the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus. And she is the prime sponsor of A938, the bill to study reparations in the New Jersey legislature. Please give it up.
my brothers, as I was driving in, I heard Senator Booker preaching, and I was saying amen from the car. Always a pleasure to be in a space with you. Father Larry Ham, always, I know I'm doing good work when I'm in the same space as you. And to my brother, Mayor Baraka, you know that I love you and will do the work that we do, not for fashion, but because we're true to this. To the Institute for Social Justice, this has been a long journey. We started this fight in 2019. Say the word. Reparations. Say the word. Reparations. How we came to that little saying. We had a governor in our favor, a Senate in our favor. You would appreciate this, Senator Booker. A legislature, the Assembly, in our favor. And we were told, you can call it anything, but what's that? Reparations. So Ryan and I was like, say it. We can't say the word reparations. This is where we are in the 21st century.
They don't know we free yet.
The recognition of the freedom to use that word and what it means, and understanding what restoration means, right, Hannah? What repair means. We have task force daily in the state of New Jersey. Anybody hear about a wealth disparities task force? Hey, use that, Assemblywoman, because that can replace a reparations task force. Anybody hear about a fair housing task force? Hey, say that, Assemblywoman, because that's part of what you want anyway, right? Segregated schools, still some of the most in the entire country here in New Jersey. Let's deal with that, Assemblywoman Sumter. Prison reforms. But we're doing that, Assemblywoman Sumter. We gave you all the right to vote for those persons on probation and parole. Wasn't that enough, Assemblywoman Sumter? So we need all of you. And I mean that. You've heard the history, and what an honor it is to stand here with the wind at my back in memory of the lost souls, some not named or identified, stolen from this very state, from this very port. To ask that we have a council that will do the research, and a no never stopped us, right? So coming up with a council that will be in the good stewardship of the Institute of Social Justice, with thought leaders from our state to start giving us some answers so we can send to Washington with our great senator who's sitting here and the full delegation to share the harms caused to New Jerseyans by slavery. And why now? I've often been asked that question, why now? And not because it's long overdue, it's because descendants are still with us. Descendants are still here to reap the benefits. And it's important in an era of cancel culture, book banning, that we start speaking truth to power and being sure that we create safe spaces for education and truth-telling, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So you can't just ask for my vote.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
New Jersey has politics that some would say are transactional. Some would say. So I'm asking each of you to make a transaction. Right? Because that's the power in this. We've gone to church. We should have given an offering a while ago. Right? So now let's make a transaction. There are 40 districts in the legislature. Every last one of us are up this November. The Senate and the Assembly. So as we come around and we'll say, will you vote for me? You know what I want you to do, right? Reparations. I needed to go to the floor for a vote. It's this period called lamed up. Right? Once elections are over and we kind of work real fast to get things done, because if it does not pass before before the second Tuesday in January, we start the clock again. Now, I appreciate the work of the Institute of Social Justice, but we do task force all the time. And why do I want this in the State House? We want it there because that's the repository where it should lie for historical reference, forever, to live in perpetuity. There's a method to this. There's a science to this. There's a history to this. So the next generation can carry the baton a little further. So while we're here, I'm looking for you to take it back to your respective communities across the 500 plus municipalities in the state of New Jersey, to the over 40 districts, which is 120 members of the New Jersey legislature, so we may have a report that can go to the federal government to say what New Jersey is seeking. The other piece to this, the council report, you can rest assured that I will be looking at that data, the same as we've done with every report that you all have put out, for policies that work towards repair, that work towards restitution, that work towards reparations. Thank you.
I want to acknowledge the chairwoman, Shavonda Sumter, who follows in the mighty legacy of the late Senator Ronald Rice. Just really quickly, part of what I think this moment requires of us is to think about how we make what seems impossible possible. And if you just think about the last couple of years, 3 years ago, there was this fierce debate in this country about Black Lives Mattering. And you all know baseline is matter, right?
Right.
Baseline is not a come up. To say something matters is just sort of baseline, but there was this fierce debate about whether Black Lives Matter, and if you said Black Lives Matter, were you diminishing all lives? You remember this. And then COVID happens, and George Floyd and other people are killed by the police. There are multiple pandemics happening, and then you started to see Black Lives Matter being painted on streets and signs, people's yards, and the country moved very quickly around the conversation about Black Lives Matter. But to make Black lives really matter, we have to do the underlying work that is the work of reparations. And so in 2019, Nicole Hannah-Jones came to NJPAC and she spoke to a sold-out group of folks. That same week, we stood with Shavonda Sumter and the Legislative Black Caucus introduced a bill that would become the New Jersey Reparations Task Force. And to the Assemblywoman's point, that bill did not move. But the strategy is in place, led by our faith allies for reparations, say the word, to advance that legislation. At the same time, in light of the resistance we were seeing for the legislative effort, we began having conversations about how we might create our own, today our own, New Jersey Reparations Council, led by these mighty chairs alongside local, state, and national leaders. And you're wondering, as folks wonder, well, how might you pay for that? Is there a foundation that would support the work of reparations? Again, this is still a word, and if you say it, sometimes not you all, but others, it disarms people. We were having, to the Assemblywoman's point, a conversation with Speaker Craig Coughlin. And I just want to say that name because you will see him, to the mayor's point, and other legislators at Juneteenth events today. And they'll talk a lot about what Juneteenth matters and the symbolism of freedom that is Juneteenth. But if you don't unpack Juneteenth, you will not appreciate the way in which Black folks are not yet totally free. And so we met with Speaker Craig Coughlin, and we said to the Assemblywoman's point, we are advocating for a New Jersey Reparations Task Force. And he had a visceral reaction. He said, oh my, did the word, Mayor, said the word reparations, it unsettles people. It makes them uncomfortable. We thought to ourselves, imagine how uncomfortable it is to be Black in New Jersey, where we confront some of the worst racial disparities in the country. That, Speaker Craig Coughlin, is uncomfortable. He said, well, why can't you call it something else? A Black Lives Matter task force, for example. A racial equity, any other name but reparations in the title. We said back then, listen, Speaker Craig Coughlin, the concession that we're making is that we're asking you to support a task force, which you all do routinely. And if we're going to ask for a concession to study, surely we've got to be clear about what we're studying. And that conversation, along with our communications director, Lori Beecham's genius, gave birth to the Say the Word Reparations campaign. But the other strategy was, as we push for legislation that will ultimately be passed, I promise you, you will see it. We're ahead of the curve on it now. We will start to bend that curve toward reparations, and you'll see the very people who fiercely resisted it. Trust me. You will see this. The very folks who now fiercely resist the creation of the New Jersey Reparations Task Force, they will later champion it. I promise you. They'll say such things as like I always supported it. There were folks who didn't. I promise you. There were people who not me, because I'm progressive. I'm liberal, Mayor Walker. At the same time, we knew we needed to have another strategy. And that is today's launch of the New Jersey Reparations Council. And we found, and I am not being hyperbolic when I say that in Maisha Simmons, who leads New Jersey grant making for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Maisha Simmons, who leads grant making for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation here in New Jersey, has been not just a supporter of the work, but a core key thought leader and partner. And she's been pushing the foundation toward reparations. It's true that we don't just have resistance in legislators. You don't see a lot of foundations.
That's right.
Right? You don't see a lot of foundations wanting to say that word, reparations. But in the name, you got Maisha Simmons, who leads grant making in New Jersey for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We've had a critical partner. It's my honor to bring Maisha Simmons to the microphone this time. Please go ahead.
Politicians and Ryan, pastors. I'm just a little girl who works at a foundation, so we may not get fired up, but we'll be ready to go. So I just want to say I'm very humbled to be here this afternoon in a place where I actually lived, worked, and worshipped in Perth Amboy. And I did not know that this place was here. So I'm truly humbled and caught up in the moment, because it's breathtaking to understand that our ancestors came to this port and we are at this point living through their dreams. So I think about my ancestors at this very moment. So my colleagues and I at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation are committed to achieving health equity in New Jersey. As Ryan mentioned, I lead the work, which means that everyone who calls New Jersey, our state, my state, your state, home should have a fair opportunity to live their healthiest life possible. But that is not possible unless we reckon with the ways in which policies and practices harm people of color and their prospects for good health. You've heard today how this Reparations Council is going to take into consideration health, and that's why we're here today. As the nation's largest philanthropy dedicated to health, we believe in dismantling structural racism and the barriers that millions face every day, simply because of their race or their identities that intersect with other oppressed identities. As a funder of the council, the foundation is saying something important. In my notes it says speak slow and emphasize, so that's what I'm going to do. The time has come for New Jersey to create a shared understanding of the harms caused to Black residents of New Jersey over the past 4 centuries, and to embark on a process that remedies these injustices. To do this right, it requires a great deal of research, planning, and public dialogue that we're all having right now. And we are funding the council to serve as the leading edge of the efforts to convene a non-governmental process to initiate that work. But as you heard today, ultimately, We also need federal, state, and local governments to take up the mantle. And that's why the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, as a part of our policy agenda, has called upon the state of New Jersey to impanel an official task force to begin a process to address historic and present harms. We see the council's work as a critical precursor to achieving the reparative justice that our governments owe to Black New Jerseyans. Before I close, there's one more point that I'd like to convey, and it's contextualized in an African proverb. But I'm going to ask the ancestors to give me a little liberty to tweak it. Y'all let me know if it works. So we've heard this before. If you want to go fast, go alone. Yes. If you want to go far, go together. Yes. Some may say that this is the time to go fast and we've waited long enough. I think it's time for us to go fast and far. But what I would argue is this moment is historic. And I ask others to follow the leadership of New Jersey Institute for Social Justice and others in the march towards justice. My colleagues and I are proud to join you on this journey so that we can go fast and go far, and we're ready to engage in the hard work that it requires. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, everyone.
Maisha, and thank you so much for your support. It's now my pleasure to introduce one of our co-chairs, Professor Tajamia Henderson. Tajamia Henderson serves as Dean of the Graduate School at Rutgers University in Newark, where she is also a professor at Rutgers Law School. Her scholarship focuses on the historical impact of punishment regimes on property systems in the U.S., and she's particularly interested in the legal histories of incarceration and chattel slavery. Dr. Henderson's research on property in prisons has been published in numerous law reviews and featured in the New York Times and Teen Vogue. Please help me in welcoming Professor Tajamia Henderson.
And thank you all for gathering here today. Thank you to our conveners, the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, its president, Ryan Haygood, our elected officials, Senator Booker, Assemblywoman Sumter, and Mayor Baraka, and all of our partners and collaborators in this effort. New Jersey has been called the slave state of the North for a reason. Not only was it the last northern state to abolish slavery, it has also been judged to have had the most severe slave code of the northern colonies. Slavery in this state was both brutal and enduring, and the state itself was complicit in this longevity. Across the nation, federal and state and local governments are celebrating the Juneteenth holiday, established to commemorate the day that Union forces arrived in Galveston to share with enslaved persons that their freedom from enslavement had actually been decreed 2 years earlier with the 1863 Emancipation Proclamation. Because even though freedom was decreed, it was not realized with the proclamation, or even with the end of the Civil War. And this is most clear right here in New Jersey, where not even the arrival of those federal troops in far west Texas, nor the late 1865 ratification of the 13th Amendment, which New Jersey refused to ratify, marked the end of slavery. We are led to believe somehow that it was only in the Deep South where lawmakers resisted the passage and ratification of those Reconstruction amendments to bring the nation together in the wake of the Civil War. But it was here in New Jersey where neither the 13th, nor the 14th, nor the 15th amendments were ratified. Not until months after the rest of the states reached ratification of the 13th Amendment and with the passage of an amendment to its state constitution, did New Jersey finally ring a true death knell for slavery. And this inauspicious commitment to freedom and Black equality has dogged the Garden State ever since. So we gather here today not only to commemorate the Jubilee, but also to announce the important work of this Reparations Council, and to call on the state's elected officials to take seriously the grave inequities that still plague us. From public school segregation, to inadequate funding for our schools, to the state's criminal justice system, where, for just one example, kids of color comprise more than 85% of incarcerated kids, even as the overall number of juveniles in custody falls. New Jersey has some work to do. And thanks to the leadership of the Institute for Social Justice and its partners, we are getting to that work. Even as the state's efforts to form a reparations task force have stalled, this work moves forward. We move forward with a commitment to clear-eyed, robust research and an accurate accounting of our state's history that is not sanitized for the benefits of folks' feelings, and the bedrock principles of public participation and real, genuine engagement. This council's work may be a model for other jurisdictions. We look forward to working with the council's convener, its committees, its thought leaders, and all of you to make this a successful effort. From here, this hallowed place, where lives were destroyed and generations put on a track that they did not themselves choose, we move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Henderson. I look forward to working with you on this project. It's now my pleasure to introduce Professor Khalil Gibran Muhammad. Khalil Gibran Muhammad is the Ford Foundation Professor of History, Race, and Public Policy at Harvard Kennedy School. He directs the Institutional Anti-Racism and Accountability Project and is the former director of the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. And it is, as you maybe some of you don't know, but it's a leading library and archive of global Black history. I think I should mention that. It's incredibly important. His writing and scholarship have been featured in national print and broadcast media outlets, such as The New Yorker, The Washington Post, The Nation, NPR, PBS NewsHour, Moyers and Company, MSNBC, and The New York Times, which includes his essay, Sugar, in the 1619 Project. He is also the award-winning author of The Condemnation of Blackness, Race, Crime, and the Making of Modern Urban America. Please put it together for Professor Muhammad.
So this is a holiday, right?
Yes.
It's Juneteenth.
Yes.
And although some of you, like myself, don't eat pork ribs, some of you do know folks who eat ribs, and you even have relatives or cousins that leave nothing on the bone, just nothing there, as if the meat just never existed. And that's how I feel standing here right now. No meat left on the bone. So it is truly indeed an honor to be here this afternoon with all of you. It is an honor to help to do this work with my dear sister, Dean Henderson at Rutgers Law School. It's an honor to work with Ryan again. He's been a force in this state since he took over the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. We are in good hands, y'all. Let's give it up to NJ. It's also an honor to have elected officials here who mean what they say, and do as they say. That makes a big difference in the world that we live in. And as I said to Mayor Baraka earlier, I am very proud of the work that he is doing in Newark.
Yes.
This country does not give him the credit that he deserves. But Newark is doing big things.
Yes.
And indeed, for the work that I do, teaching about the past through the prism of public policy, helping future leaders understand what change looks like, I'm sending them to Newark for a little bit of community service and case studies, as well as understanding up close and personal what change actually looks like. So let me just say that former Mayor Booker, Senator Booker, left one thing out of his earlier remarks. He left out the fact that he and Congresswoman Barbara Lee have co-sponsored a bill currently to focus on the past, a U.S. Truth Commission, to help us come to terms with our history, to reckon with our past, and to build the collective knowledge we need in this nation in order to move forward. So let's give it up to Senator Booker and Congresswoman Barbara Lee. And finally, I want to thank all of the committee members. If you're a committee member here, like Sister Simmons, as well as others, please raise your hand. Excellent. Let's thank everybody here who is committed to this work. Jim Henderson and I, as co-chairs, we certainly are privileged and honored to be able to lead this work, to be able to help guide this work. But the foot soldiers of this work are those committee members spread across those 9 committees who will be producing, as the young people say, the receipts, the evidence, the facts of what has happened in this country and in this state in particular. So I'm very grateful to be able to work over the next 2 years as we go into our committee work, as we convene the public, and as we reveal our findings and make hard and strong policy recommendations.
Yes.
Let me also acknowledge that Juneteenth is a new holiday for us. It is actually the second federal holiday to be passed since Martin Luther King holiday, more than a generation ago. But let me also note that Juneteenth right now may go down as the first holiday in the history of the United States to be effectively nullified by half the states in this country. And what do I mean by nullification? If you happen to be a student in Texas today, a state that in 1980 passed a Juneteenth holiday, according to the legislation passed in the state of Texas, weeks in proximity to the Juneteenth holiday, you cannot teach about the history of slavery other than to say that it was a deviation from American values. You cannot teach that it was one of the greatest systems of labor extraction the world has ever known and sits as the bedrock of global capitalism to this day. So the intentionality of what slavery intended 243 years before the Emancipation Proclamation now must be misdirected, form of disinformation in the state of Texas, as if it was just a bump on the road, as Ta-Nehisi Coates. No, damn it, it was the road. This is not just a Texas problem, because you know, of course, that the story of Ruby Bridges is no longer able to be told in Florida, or that Amanda Gorman's The Hill We Climb cannot be taught or recited in some schools in Florida. You know that the current governor, Ron DeSantis, who's running for president, has eliminated diversity, equity, and inclusion in the state of Florida, and just this past week stripped through the veto power of the Florida budget funding for Black History Month in the months to come. You see, this problem, though, as Dean Henderson suggested earlier, is not just a Texas or a Florida or a Southern problem.
That's right.
This is a problem that we can also find in our own backyard here in the great liberal North. Let me remind you from what you already know, that in the civil rights legislation of 1964, when the bill was going through committees, Senator Everett Dirksen of Illinois stripped from the bill any language that would implicate northern cities in formal segregation by removing the capacity to use busing as a means to redress that problem. Because what they essentially said that the unequal balance in our schools was not a consequence of racist Southern manipulation, but a problem of simple housing choices. And so our own federal government, through our own Northern Congress people at the time of Jim Crow and white supremacy America, made it impossible for us in the state of New Jersey to deal with the problem that we had then and that we have to this day. Let me also share something with you a little more personal and closer to home. I teach at the Harvard Kennedy School. And just as our own legislators here said you can't say reparations, we couldn't say redlining a few years ago. Couldn't say redlining in an exhibition sitting in the school as a form of systemic racism because the dean at the time preferred to call it racial and economic inequality. There's a difference between intentionality and an outcome. Let me also remind you that the College Board that effectively serves the purpose of creating a national education curriculum through its 38 courses recently said that not only can you not say reparations, you can't say black feminism, you can't say black queer studies, and you can't say, in the words of DeSantis, intersectionality. You see, this is a problem that is both national and local. 49 states have passed anti-CRT, or I should say attempted to pass anti-CRT legislation, including some local school boards here in New Jersey. So what is at stake in this work, as Dean Henderson has already said, is that we have an opportunity here in New Jersey. Not only do we have an opportunity to get it right, we have an opportunity to set a national blueprint, a model, to make Senator Booker's job a little bit easier. Let me also tell you what's at stake is the erasure of these histories. Because we aren't the first person to come together to make a call for redressing and repairing the past. Some of you may know of the black woman, Callie House. Born in 1861 in Tennessee. She was part in an effort, like H.R. 40, to pass an ex-slave pension bill, H.R. 1119. That led to the establishment of an organization called the National Ex-Slave Mutual Relief, Bounty, and Pension Association. And they determined then at the time that about $68 million would cover the tab for those who were most proximate to slavery at that time. For her work, 2 years after that organization was founded, she was prosecuted, indicted, and ultimately served time in prison, in a federal prison, accused of mail fraud. A pattern that would repeat itself one generation later when the great Marcus Garvey led a national movement to help to build a working class movement of black people who would ultimately take their freedom into their own hands. Charged with mail fraud, served time in federal prison, and deported back to Jamaica. More recently, you know that the late, great Randall Robinson, who wrote The Debt, who also fought against apartheid, also made a call and a demand for reparations. What's at stake in the erasure of our history? What's at stake in the inability of teachers to teach the truth of the past is that they don't want our children to know that this is the first rodeo. They don't want our children to know and to see how hard we have fought time and time again, generation after generation, because it is empowering to know that you're not crazy. It's empowering to know that other people came to the same conclusion that this is a fraud, that we've been lied to, bamboozled, hoodwinked. That history is powerful and empowering. So make no mistake about it. The fact that on Juneteenth about half the states have effectively nullified the holiday is intentional. And so we have an opportunity to get this right. Let me tell you, as I close, I've been studying how other countries come to terms with their past. In the past 18 months, I've been to Northern Ireland, and as many of you know, Catholics in Northern Ireland fought against the British for their own liberation. I've been to Rwanda, where I've looked at the work of that country to reconcile with the 1994 genocide, which by scale and speed of death is the greatest Holocaust committed against a people the world has ever known. In South Africa, we visited Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Cape Town to understand precisely what this country has attempted to do through its own Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And let me tell you something, in all of those places, the most remarkable fact that exists in each of those countries is that they have not been able to avoid the truth of their past. And the great irony of their insistence on truth-telling is that these great United States of America have been standing behind the scenes holding them accountable.
That's right.
It's laughable, isn't it? Wow. Indeed, the blueprint for much of the Reparations and Truth Commission work, you may have heard Germany just cut another $1 billion check to the survivors of the Holocaust, and that's a good thing. But many of you may know that the blueprint of the kind of truth and reconciliation work came from the Holocaust in World War II. And indeed, the United States helped to write the post-war constitution for that country that not only insists that each generation of Germans learn what they did, but they built prisons in Germany to ensure that human dignity would be sacrosanct and would never be violated, and that people would have an opportunity to have their dignity restored by that system, based on that country's history. So we have a tall task before us here in these United States. The most powerful country on earth is also a country that is the most arrogant country on earth. But it's not all of us. All of us are not implicated in this problem. All of us are not neo-Confederates. Many of us today believe in truth and justice. And so I'm going to close with words that are both inspirational and more powerful than any that I could have written today. In 1967, this man said that when emancipation came, black people got freedom to hunger, freedom to the rains and winds of heaven. It was freedom and famine at the same time. He said the government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. You know who said this. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, Dr. King went on to say, they provided county agents to further their expertise and farming. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm. And they are the very people telling the black man he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. This is what we are faced with in America. And this is the reality now when we come to Washington. No. Let me say, when we come to Trenton, this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
For those inspiring words. I really do look forward to working with you on this endeavor. We certainly received a good word from many of our speakers, but something tells me that I think that we're about to be taken to church. The Reverend Dr. Charles Franklin Boyer, or as the French would say, Boyer, is a third-generation African Methodist Episcopal preacher. He is the pastor of Greater Mount Zion AME Church in Trenton, New Jersey, and the founder of Salvation and Social Justice, a nonpartisan, black faith-rooted public policy. He is a senior consultant to the Social Action Commission of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Dr. Boyer is the leading faith voice in New Jersey for racial justice issues, and the campaign to abolish the drug war and criminalization of black people. Please give it up for Reverend Charles Boyer. that Dr. Muhammad has taken the bones, the tablecloth, folding up the tables and chairs. I'll just sit here with a bucket and clean up. Let's give it up to the Institute, my good brother Ryan Haywood, certainly to the chairman, to these great scholars which are leading us to our awesome elected officials, which like there are none in the country, and certainly to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. I can feel the spirit of my ancestors in the wind.
Yes, yes, yes.
And the water.
Yes.
I also come here fresh off memorializing those 9 souls taken from us at Emmanuel AME Church. Since I'm a pastor, but I'm sure enough not the only preacher in the house, but I feel it fitting to lift up some scripture.
That's right. All right. All right.
Exodus chapter 12, verses 35 and 36. It reads this way. It says, the Israelites had done as Moses told them. They asked the Egyptians for jewelry of silver and gold and for clothing. And the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they left them and let them have what they asked. And so they plundered the Egyptians. We ain't asking to plunder, we just want what we owe.
All right. All right.
Sisters and brothers, I come here today specifically, I think more than anything else, is my capacity as a pastor in one of the oldest black churches in this state. Greater Mount Zion AME Church in Trenton was originally the Free African Society of Trenton. The black church has provided massive social services and advocacy and safe harbor for black people terrorized by this state and other states like it across the country. We've been denied rights. Let me just say there would be no black church if there was no racism. We've been denied rights, education, economics, and the black church, black faith has stood in this gap at every single point. That cost, and it has cost our churches and still costs our churches. At the same time, the state has historically left black churches out of historic preservation dollars and other supports it has granted to all other faiths, but leaves us out of the picture. And sisters and brothers, it's not just the state that owes us. I'm going to say something that's not going to feel real good. But other religious denominations have made tremendous amount of money through slavery. Let me assure you, the beauty of these cathedrals and the beauty of many of these places was not done by merely tithes and offerings. There needs to be an accounting. Oh, we need a new accountant to tell a story of why and how we got here. Sisters and brothers, this to me is so much more powerful than merely the state's task force alone. I've talked to Ryan for hours upon hours, and I told him I don't trust Pharaoh to come up with an account
something of what Pharaoh owes us.
That's right. All right.
And so I'm so excited about this because this is black people
Yes.
examining what happened to black people.
Yes.
And it's the only way we're going to get to truth. So by the time the state does it, we have a standard.
Yes.
So we can point out the lies that they pop up.
Yes.
Oh, no. You say this, but Dr. Muhammad says that. Finally, sisters and brothers, even though this is Juneteenth, we still ain't free.
That's right.
We ain't free till there is no racial wealth gap.
Yes. Right.
We ain't free until there are no more racial disparities in incarceration.
Yes.
We ain't free until a black woman can give birth as safely as a white woman in this state.
Yes.
We ain't free until our children receive just as good education, if not better, than white children. We ain't free until black home ownership is as much possible for me and my children. And the threat of losing that home doesn't even exist. We ain't free. We ain't free until my neighborhood is as clean and has as many trees and the water is as good to drink as it is in Trenton to Princeton. We ain't free. We ain't free until my people have been paid for their labor of our ancestors, the trauma that we have gone through, till we not only get the labor, but we also get the pain and suffering.
Thank you so much, Reverend Boyer, for closing us out. As the convener of the council, I just want to thank our speakers, our elected officials, Senator Booker, Mayors Baraka and Kaba, as well as Chairwoman Sumter, as well as our co-chairs of our council, Dean Henderson, Professor Muhammad, as well as Maisha for helping to make this happen. As well as our Institute President, Ryan Haygood, our council members, Chairman Ham and Reverend Boyer. I also want to thank my colleagues at the Institute. But I also want to thank you all today for coming here to support this endeavor. You've all received our clarion call, our prophetic marching orders, because now the work begins. It is now that the hard work begins, right? It's just the beginning. And so as part of that, I would like for you all to continue to keep supporting the Institute, to keep abreast of when the meetings will happen, to keep supporting our work, because this is going to be a long process. So please sign up to get the Institute's updates by texting 52886. Once again, that is 52886. Or you can email justice@njisj.org. Once again, you can also email justice@njisj.org. That concludes our event for today. And for those of you who have questions, please come up. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. And we also look forward to answering questions in the future. Thank you so much, everyone.